What if the key to success isn't knowing more, but knowing what you don't know? In this audiobook summary of Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know by Adam Grant, we dive into the revolutionary concept of rethinking, the ability to challenge our assumptions and open ourselves up to new perspectives. Grant argues that the most successful individuals and leaders are not those with the most answers, but those who are willing to ask better questions and change their minds when new information arises. This summary will walk you through the core principles of Grant's approach to intellectual humility, overcoming biases, and embracing uncertainty to fuel personal and professional growth. If you're ready to rethink how you approach problems, relationships, and decisions, keep listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out more detailed book summaries designed to help you grow smarter and faster. Chapter 1: The Importance of Rethinking Our Thinking. Think Again. The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know by Adam Grant introduces us to a revolutionary idea: rethinking. This is not just about changing your mind on a whim. It's about cultivating the ability to question your assumptions and beliefs. In a world that constantly throws new information and challenges at us, the ability to admit we don't have all the answers is an invaluable tool for personal growth and success. Grant begins the book with a bold premise: we're all wrong sometimes. This might sound unsettling, but it's a reality most of us avoid confronting. Humans, by nature, hold on to their beliefs tightly. Whether it's a political view, a religious stance, or our career choices, we often defend them as though our entire identity is at stake. However, Grant flips this idea on its head, arguing that the ability to admit we're wrong is not a weakness, it's a strength. Intellectual humility, the acknowledgement that our knowledge is incomplete and can be flawed, is a key theme that Grant explores. Grant uses a powerful analogy to drive this point home. Think of your brain like a scientist running an experiment. When a scientist tests a hypothesis and new data challenges it, they don't cling to their original belief out of stubbornness. Instead, they pivot and adapt. Similarly, we can all be better scientists of our own thoughts. The key is to develop a mindset that constantly questions what we know, ensuring that we aren't stuck in outdated or inaccurate ways of thinking. One of the primary reasons we resist change is the cognitive biases that shape our thinking. For example, confirmation bias leads us to search for information that validates what we already believe, often ignoring evidence that contradicts our views. This can result in an echo chamber where we surround ourselves with people who think like we do, reinforcing our own beliefs without ever being challenged. But this is where the practice of intellectual humility becomes essential. Intellectual humility is the antidote to confirmation bias. It's about being open to the idea that you might not have all the answers, and that your perspective may be incomplete or even wrong. It's not easy, but it's a crucial skill in developing a growth mindset. Instead of holding tight to certainty, we can embrace curiosity, constantly striving to learn and grow. Grant goes on to emphasize how the ability to rethink can make us better at our jobs, relationships, and decision-making. In the chapter, he introduces the story of Preston, a mechanic who had been doing things his way for years. He was certain his method of fixing cars was the best, until he met someone who questioned his approach. At first, Preston resisted, but as he was presented with new evidence and better ways of doing things, he realized his previous methods weren't the most efficient. This process of rethinking his approach made him a better mechanic. This story illustrates that rethinking is not just about admitting we were wrong. It's about adapting to new information to become better at what we do. Grant emphasizes that change and progress often arise from rethinking. People who embrace this mindset tend to be more innovative and successful. Instead of sticking to what we know, we should constantly ask ourselves, what do I not know, or what am I missing? This mindset keeps us open to new possibilities and allows us to grow in ways we may not have anticipated. At the heart of this chapter is a challenge. Rethinking is a skill. It's not something we're born with, but something we can develop. And the first step toward rethinking is recognizing that we don't know everything. This mindset opens us up to the possibility of change and growth, encouraging us to be more flexible in how we think and more open to learning from others. Grant concludes the chapter by urging us to think like a scientist. A scientist doesn't take a belief or theory at face value. They test it, challenge it, and revise it when new evidence emerges. Similarly, we should question our beliefs, seek out opposing viewpoints, and be open to changing our minds when presented with better information. This process isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It shows that we're capable of growth and that we're committed to evolving our thinking rather than clinging to outdated ideas. The essence of Chapter 1 is this: rethinking is not a sign of failure, but a sign of strength. It's about developing the courage to admit when we're wrong, the humility to learn from others, and the curiosity to constantly seek out new perspectives. This ability to rethink, to evolve our thinking, is what keeps us sharp, innovative, and adaptable in a world that never stops changing. As we move forward in the book, we'll explore more strategies for rethinking our thinking, decision-making, and understanding of the world. For now, reflect on this. When was the last time you challenged your beliefs, and were you open to the possibility of being wrong? This mindset is not just about being more flexible. It's about being more human. It's about embracing the discomfort of uncertainty and using that discomfort as fuel for growth. And that, as Grant explains, is where the real power lies. Chapter 2, The Joy of Being Wrong. In the world of success and personal development, being wrong is often seen as a flaw, something to be avoided at all costs. But in Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know, Adam Grant flips this idea on its head. He argues that being wrong can actually be a source of immense growth, joy, and empowerment. In this chapter, Grant explores how embracing being wrong, rather than fearing it, can lead to personal breakthroughs and greater wisdom. Imagine this. You're convinced you know the right answer, only to later discover you were wrong. For many, the immediate instinct is to feel embarrassed or defeated. But Grant challenges this reaction. Instead of seeing the act of being wrong as a failure, he encourages us to view it as an opportunity to improve. In fact, acknowledging our mistakes and being open to changing our minds is a key element of intellectual growth. Grant introduces a concept of cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch your thinking based on new information or circumstances. It's the ability to admit when you're wrong and adjust your thinking accordingly. This skill is essential for success in an ever-changing world. The more flexible we are in our thinking, the more adept we become at solving problems and making better decisions. One of the most compelling points Grant makes in this chapter is how much joy there can be in being wrong. When you embrace the idea that you don't always have the answers, you open yourself up to a world of learning. Grant shares the story of John, a seasoned doctor who had spent years relying on his own medical methods. However, when a younger doctor challenged him with new research, John found himself initially resistant. But as he looked into the new information and accepted that his approach may have been outdated, he experienced a profound sense of relief and empowerment. Rather than feeling threatened by the younger doctor's challenge, John felt a sense of joy from learning something new and improving his practice. This joy of being wrong isn't limited to doctors or professionals. It applies to anyone, whether it's in our relationships, careers, or personal lives. Being wrong can push us to examine our assumptions, test new ideas, and grow in ways we never imagined. Embracing being wrong allows us to be more curious and open-minded, making it easier to challenge the status quo and explore uncharted territory. Grant takes this idea further by introducing the concept of scientific thinking. When scientists conduct experiments, they don't view mistakes or failures as the end. They view them as valuable pieces of data. Every failed experiment is just a step toward a better solution. In this way, thinking like a scientist can free us from the fear of being wrong and help us to approach problems with more openness and curiosity. This shift in mindset also has the power to transform our relationships. In personal interactions, we often fall into the trap of thinking we have all the answers, especially when it comes to the people we're closest to. Grant points out that the ability to rethink our assumptions and admit when we've been wrong can lead to deeper, more honest connections. Rather than defending our views, we can engage in conversations that foster learning and understanding. Moreover, embracing being wrong opens up the possibility of discovering better ways of doing things. Grant uses the example of a tech entrepreneur who initially believed in the power of a single product to revolutionize the market. However, after rethinking his approach and experimenting with new ideas, he realized that a range of products would be more effective in reaching different customer segments. This willingness to embrace failure, pivot, and adjust his thinking allowed him to succeed in a way he hadn't previously imagined. Grant also highlights the joy that comes from shifting perspectives. rather than feeling defeated when our ideas. Grant wraps up this chapter by suggesting that we view identity as a journey of discovery rather than a destination. The more we allow ourselves to evolve and adapt, the more we can unlock new potential in ourselves. Our identity isn't something that's fixed for life. It's something we can shape, change, and reinvent. By embracing fluidity of our identity and staying open to new experiences, we free ourselves from the limitations of our past and open up to a future full of endless possibilities. In the end, rethinking our identity isn't about abandoning who we've been. It's about creating the space to become who we are meant to be. So, as you reflect on your own sense of self, ask yourself, how much of your identity is tied to outdated beliefs or past experiences? What would it look like to let go of those old labels and embrace the person you're becoming? By rethinking your identity, you give yourself the power to shape a future that aligns with who you truly are. Chapter 4: The Power of Rethinking Your Opinions. In a world filled with constant information and competing viewpoints, our ability to hold strong opinions and change them when necessary can be one of our greatest strengths. Yet, many of us are reluctant to change our opinions, especially when they are tied to our identity or our deeply held beliefs. In Think Again, Adam Grant dives into the art of rethinking not just what we believe, but how we engage with our own opinions and the opinions of others. It's not about blindly accepting every new idea that comes our way, but rather having the courage and flexibility to reconsider what we believe and why we believe it. Grant starts by exploring the concept of intellectual humility, the understanding that we don't have all the answers and that our current beliefs might be incomplete or incorrect. Intellectual humility is not about doubting everything we believe, but rather being open to the possibility that our views are not set in stone. This mindset encourages us to view opinions as something we can refine and evolve, not something we must fiercely defend at all costs. This concept runs counter to what most of us have been taught, especially in cultures that reward confidence and decisiveness. To illustrate the power of intellectual humility, Grant draws on the story of the prosecutor mindset. Many of us, when faced with an opposing opinion or argument, react defensively, almost as if we're in a courtroom, preparing to prove that we are right. We defend our opinions vigorously, often resorting to tactics that shut down meaningful conversation. This prosecutor mindset encourages us to win the argument rather than seeking to understand the other person's perspective or reconsider our own beliefs. Instead of the prosecutor mindset, Grant suggests adopting the scientist mindset. When scientists engage with ideas, they don't assume they have all the answers. Instead, they test their hypotheses, gather evidence, and remain open to the possibility that they may be wrong. The scientist mindset is about curiosity, inquiry, and a willingness to let go of outdated opinions when new information arises. It's about the ability to question our assumptions, test our beliefs, and refine our thinking in light of new evidence. One of the key themes of this chapter is the importance of cognitive flexibility, the ability to change our minds when presented with new evidence or better arguments. Cognitive flexibility allows us to reconsider our opinions, even if it means admitting that we were wrong. Grant acknowledges that this can be difficult, especially when our opinions are closely tied to our sense of self. Letting go of a deeply held belief can feel like an attack on our identity, and many of us prefer to cling to what we know rather than risk the discomfort of being wrong. Grant offers the example of people who hold entrenched political views. In today's polarized climate, people often define themselves by their political identity. They see the world through the lens of their party affiliation or ideological beliefs, which can make it nearly impossible to change their minds. But as Grant points out, the most successful people are not those who rigidly stick to their initial beliefs, but those who have the courage to reconsider their opinions when new evidence arises. By being willing to change their minds, they are better able to navigate the complexities of the world and make better decisions. In addition to cognitive flexibility, Grant discusses the role of feedback in the process of rethinking opinions. One of the most powerful tools we have for rethinking our beliefs is feedback from others. When we engage in open, honest conversations with people who challenge our viewpoints, we gain new perspectives that can help us refine our opinions. However, feedback only works if we approach it with the right mindset. Instead of getting defensive or dismissing opposing views, we must be willing to listen, consider new information, and be open to the possibility that we might be wrong. To make this point, Grant shares a story about a manager who learned to change his leadership style after receiving feedback from his team. At first, he was resistant to the idea that his management style might not be as effective as he thought. But when he listened to his team's feedback and reflected on it, he realized that his approach was alienating employees and preventing them from reaching their full potential. By being open to feedback and rethinking his approach, he was able to build a stronger, more collaborative team. Grant also emphasizes the importance of curiosity and humility in the process of rethinking our opinions. When we are genuinely curious about other people's viewpoints, we approach conversations with an open mind, eager to learn rather than argue. This curiosity allows us to engage in more productive and meaningful discussions, where the goal is not to win but to understand. Humility, on the other hand, helps us recognize that we are not always right, and that we can learn from others. By cultivating these qualities, we can create a space where new ideas can flourish and where our opinions can evolve in ways that make us more informed and more open-minded. Grant also delves into the idea of mindset shifts, how changing our approach to thinking can lead to profound changes in the way we engage with the world. One example he provides is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe that their intelligence and abilities are static. They tend to avoid challenges and give up easily when faced with setbacks. On the other hand, people with a growth mindset believe that their abilities can improve through effort and learning. They embrace challenges and view failures as opportunities for growth. When it comes to rethinking our opinions, the growth mindset is essential. It encourages us to view new information and opposing viewpoints as opportunities to learn rather than as threats to our self-image. People with a growth mindset are not afraid to change their minds. They see it as part of the process of becoming more knowledgeable and more capable. The chapter concludes with a powerful call to action, to embrace the discomfort of change and let go of the need to always be right. It's not easy, but the rewards are immense. When we learn to rethink our opinions, we become more adaptable, more empathetic, and more effective in navigating complexities of life. We open ourselves up to new ideas, new perspectives, and new opportunities, all of which can lead to greater success and personal fulfillment. By practicing intellectual humility, staying curious, and embracing cognitive flexibility, we can rethink not just our opinions, but our entire approach to learning, growth, and engagement with the world. And in doing so, we unlock the power to create a more thoughtful, open-minded, and successful life. Chapter 5. Rethinking our relationships, how to engage with others in a productive way. Relationships, whether professional or personal, are central to our lives. We spend a significant amount of time engaging with others, whether it's in the workplace, at home, or in social settings. However, one of the most challenging and rewarding areas where we must rethink our approach is in how we engage with others, particularly when it comes to conflict, communication, and differing viewpoints. This chapter in Think Again explores the transformative power of rethinking our interactions with others in a way that fosters more effective, productive, and empathetic relationships. Grant begins by diving into the concept of rethinking conflict. We often approach conflict with a mindset that revolves around winning the argument or defending our position at all costs. This zero-sum approach creates an environment of adversarial thinking, where one party must be right and the other must be wrong. Yet, Grant suggests that when we rethink our approach to conflict, we can move away from the idea of winning and instead focus on collaborating and learning from the disagreement. One of the key strategies Grant introduces is the concept of cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy involves understanding another person's perspective without necessarily agreeing with it. It's about seeing the world through their eyes and recognizing the underlying reasons for their beliefs and opinions. When we approach conversations from a place of cognitive empathy, we open the door to meaningful dialogue that is focused on understanding rather than on winning or being right. This approach helps us break down barriers and build stronger, more respectful relationships. To highlight the power of cognitive empathy, Grant provides the example of a manager and employee who have conflicting views about a project. Instead of escalating the disagreement and viewing the situation as a competition, the manager decides to engage in conversation with the employee from a place of empathy. By actively listening and understanding the employee's point of view, the manager can create an environment of trust and collaboration. The result is not just a resolution to conflict, but a stronger working relationship and a more productive team dynamic. In the context of rethinking relationships, Grant also emphasizes the role of humility. Chapter 6, The Power of Rethinking Your Own Thinking. One of the most profound transformations we can make is within ourselves. In Think Again, Adam Grant pushes us to reconsider not just how we view the world around us, but how we view our own thought processes. This chapter explores how the way we think about thinking, the mental frameworks we use to approach problems, decisions, and ideas, shapes not only our understanding of the world, but our ability to adapt and grow. Grant starts by introducing the concept of cognitive flexibility, which is the ability to shift our thinking based on new information or changing circumstances. Cognitive flexibility is crucial because it allows us to abandon outdated beliefs and approaches in favor of more effective ones. Too often, we become comfortable in our existing mindset, holding on to the way we've always done things because it feels familiar and safe. However, Grant challenges us to break free from this inertia, urging us to embrace the discomfort of questioning our assumptions and adapting to new ways of thinking. He notes that cognitive flexibility is especially important in today's fast-paced, ever-changing world. The skills that worked for us yesterday may no longer be effective today, and the approaches we relied on in the past may be outdated or even harmful. By being willing to rethink our thinking, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities, allowing us to continuously grow, learn, and improve. Grant shares an example from the world of medicine, where doctors are often faced with complex, evolving challenges. The field of medicine is one where new research, new technologies, and new approaches are constantly emerging, and yet many practitioners hold on to outdated beliefs or stubbornly follow traditional practices simply because they are familiar. Grant highlights how a physician who is willing to rethink their approach in light of new evidence is far more likely to provide better care to their patients. This willingness to rethink one's own thinking can be the difference between success and failure, between effectiveness and inefficiency. But cognitive flexibility is not just for doctors or professionals in high-stakes environments. It applies to everyone. Whether we are faced with a business decision, a personal dilemma, or a social conflict, the ability to rethink how we approach problems can have a massive impact on our outcomes. Grant notes that mental models, the frameworks we use to interpret the world, are not static. They should evolve over time as we gain new insights and experiences. The more we embrace this idea, the more likely we are to succeed in whatever challenges we face. One of the keys to developing cognitive flexibility, Grant suggests, is embracing the idea of being wrong. Being wrong isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be celebrated. In fact, embracing being wrong is a powerful step in the process of rethinking. When we allow ourselves to acknowledge that we could be wrong, we free ourselves from the prison of our own biases and assumptions. We stop holding on to beliefs that no longer serve us and start exploring alternative perspectives. Grant gives the example of scientists who are constantly rethinking their theories in the face of new data. The scientific method is founded on the idea that no theory is ever truly proven. Rather, it is tested, refined, and adjusted as new information comes in. The best scientists are those who are comfortable with uncertainty and are willing to revise their hypotheses when faced with contradictory evidence. This mindset can be applied to our everyday lives as well, especially when it comes to personal and professional growth. This idea of rethinking also plays a central role in critical thinking. Grant argues that being a critical thinker is not about being overly skeptical or dismissive of new ideas. Rather, it's about being open to new information while still applying rigorous analysis. It's about being curious, asking questions, and remaining humble enough to accept that our initial understanding might be incomplete or flawed. Critical thinking is not about dismissing ideas, but about evaluating them with an open mind and a willingness to change our stance when the evidence warrants it. Grant also points out the dangers of overconfidence. Overconfidence is the opposite of cognitive flexibility. It is a belief that we have all the answers and that we are always right. Overconfident individuals are less likely to entertain new ideas or change their minds, and this rigidity can prevent them from learning or growing. Overconfidence is particularly dangerous in decision-making, as it leads to poor judgment, ignoring crucial details, and underestimating risks. The key to overcoming overconfidence is self-awareness, understanding that our knowledge is limited and that there is always room for improvement. To help readers practice rethinking their thinking, Grant offers several strategies. One of these is to adopt a scientific mindset. Instead of viewing our beliefs and decisions as final and unchangeable, we should treat them as hypotheses that can be tested and adjusted. This shift in perspective encourages us to experiment with new ideas, gather feedback, and learn from our mistakes. By viewing life as an ongoing experiment, we become more adaptable and resilient in the face of change. Another strategy is to surround ourselves with people who challenge our thinking. Just as a scientific theory is refined through peer review and debate, our own thinking can be sharpened by engaging with others who offer different perspectives. This doesn't mean seeking out people who always disagree with us, but rather individuals who can offer constructive criticism and alternative viewpoints that force us to reconsider our assumptions. Grant also encourages readers to practice mindfulness as a tool for rethinking. Mindfulness helps us become more aware of our own thought processes and the mental habits that shape our thinking. By becoming more conscious of how we think, we can better identify when our thinking is becoming rigid or biased and take steps to challenge it. Mindfulness fosters a sense of curiosity and openness, which is essential for rethinking and personal growth. Finally, Grant stresses that rethinking is a lifelong process. It's not something that happens overnight or after a single moment of reflection. Instead, it's a continuous cycle of learning, adapting, and evolving. To truly embrace the power of rethinking, we must make it a habit and integrate it into our daily lives. This process requires patience, humility, and the willingness to face discomfort as we challenge our own thinking. As this chapter concludes, Grant reminds us that the most successful and fulfilled individuals are those who are willing to rethink their own thinking. By embracing cognitive flexibility, acknowledging our potential for error, and adopting a mindset of curiosity and critical thinking, we can navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and intelligence. The act of rethinking, Grant argues, is not just about improving our knowledge. It's about improving ourselves as individuals, helping us to become better, more adaptive thinkers who are always growing and evolving. Chapter 7, The Art of Rethinking in Relationships. The way we approach relationships, whether personal or professional, can significantly impact the quality of our lives. In this chapter, Adam Grant dives deep into how our ability to rethink and reevaluate our relationships can enhance both our personal growth and our interactions with others. From the moment we meet someone, our minds automatically categorize them, assigning them certain labels or assumptions based on past experiences. This can be helpful for quick decision-making, but it also leads to biases that shape how we engage with others. Grant emphasizes that our mental models for relationships are often built on outdated or narrow frameworks that prevent us from seeing people for who they truly are. These models may stem from our upbringing, cultural influences, or even societal norms. In this chapter, Grant urges us to challenge these preconceived notions and reframe the way we view and interact with the people in our lives. Grant introduces a concept of relational agility, which involves being flexible and open-minded in our approach to relationships. Just as cognitive flexibility allows us to adapt our thinking in light of new information, relational agility helps us adapt our behaviors and attitudes when engaging with others. It's about shedding the rigidity of assumptions and embracing the idea that relationships, like people, evolve over time. By doing so, we can develop stronger, more meaningful connections with others. One of the key aspects of relational agility is the ability to question our assumptions about people. Too often, we operate under the assumption that our first impression of someone is accurate and final. If someone is quiet or reserved, we may label them as shy or standoffish. If someone is outspoken or assertive, we may categorize them as aggressive or domineering. These labels can become self-fulfilling prophecies, influencing how we treat others and how they perceive us. Grant encourages us to challenge these assumptions and recognize that people are multifaceted beings who can surprise us if we allow them to. Grant uses the example of team dynamics in the workplace to highlight the importance of relational agility. In many professional settings, teams are made up of people with varying communication styles, personalities, and approaches to problem solving. However, the success of a team doesn't rely solely on its individual members' expertise. It hinges on how well those members collaborate, adapt, and communicate with one another. By rethinking our assumptions about how people work together and embracing different perspectives, We can build more effective teams and foster a culture of mutual respect and collaboration. Grant also explores how our relationships with family and friends can benefit from rethinking. He highlights the concept of Grant begins this chapter by addressing how many of us get trapped in our initial career choices, feeling compelled to stay on a path because of the expectations we've set for ourselves or the pressures we feel from society or family. Often, these early decisions about our careers are made with limited information, shaped by the norms and structures that we believe are the only way to succeed. We may pick a career based on what's practical or safe rather than what aligns with our evolving passions or skills. The first part of rethinking your career involves embracing career fluidity, the idea that it's okay to pivot, change direction, or even step away from a career that no longer fulfills you. This is a mindset that challenges a common narrative that success comes from linear progression. Grant argues that in today's world, career success no longer depends on climbing a single ladder, but on the ability to evolve and adapt over time. Grant introduces a concept of career remixing, which is all about reimagining your professional life by combining skills, experiences, and opportunities in new ways. Career remixing acknowledges that we don't have to fit into a single mold or path. Instead, we can remix our expertise into a portfolio of skills that aligns more closely with our evolving interests and goals. For instance, someone with a background in engineering may decide to pivot toward design or entrepreneurship, using their technical knowledge in new and creative ways. Or someone in a marketing role may explore content creation, blending their communication skills with a passion for storytelling. The idea is to move away from the idea of a rigid career path and embrace the flexibility of combining various interests and skills into a more personalized career journey. A key theme in this chapter is the value of curiosity in career development. Too often, people get stuck in their career trajectories because they stop being curious. They settle into their roles and assume that their skills or knowledge have plateaued. But Grant stresses the importance of remaining curious, asking questions, and exploring new areas of growth. Whether it's taking on new projects, learning new technologies, or simply seeking out experiences that stretch your abilities, curiosity is a driving force that leads to continued growth and fulfillment. It allows us to break free from stagnation and find joy in new learning opportunities, whether they're directly related to our current role or something entirely different. One of the most important concepts that Grant discusses in this chapter is the idea of creating a learning mindset as opposed to a performance mindset. The performance mindset is where we measure success by the results we achieve, whether promotions, accolades, or financial rewards. However, the learning mindset is focused on progress, skill development, and self-improvement, rather than external validation. A learning mindset can help us overcome setbacks and challenges because we view them as opportunities to grow, not failures to avoid. By adopting this mindset, we can transform how we approach career obstacles, reframe setbacks, and position ourselves for long-term success. For instance, a person might face a major setback in their career, such as being passed over for a promotion or losing a job. It's easy to see these situations as personal failures, but a learning mindset allows us to see them as valuable learning experiences. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, we can shift our focus to what we can learn from the experience, whether it's feedback from a manager, new insights into our skills, or a realization of what we truly want out of our career. Rethinking these situations through a lens of learning can help us develop resilience and emotional strength, both of which are critical in navigating the ups and downs of a career. Grant also introduces the idea of career self-assessment, encouraging readers to periodically evaluate where they are in their careers and whether they're still aligned with their values and goals. He emphasizes that this doesn't have to be a dramatic overhaul, but rather an honest reflection on whether our career is still fulfilling, whether our skills are being fully utilized, and whether we're continuing to grow. If the answers to any of these questions are no, then it's time to rethink our approach. Self-assessment can take many forms, from seeking feedback from others to taking personality or strengths tests, to simply reflecting on what brings us satisfaction in our work. By actively assessing where we are, we can make more informed decisions about where we want to go next. Rethinking isn't just about taking bold, dramatic steps forward. Sometimes it's about making small adjustments that will align our career with our evolving goals and personal growth. Another interesting section of the chapter focuses on the importance of network remixing. Grant points out that as our careers change, so too should our professional networks. The people we connect with early in our careers may no longer be the best fit for our evolving path. Network remixing is a process of intentionally seeking out new connections that align with where we want to go next. This doesn't mean abandoning old connections, but instead expanding our networks to include people who bring different perspectives and experiences that can support our growth. Grant provides several examples of individuals who have successfully reinvented themselves by thinking creatively about their career paths. One such story is of a man who transitioned from a law career to a tech startup role, leveraging his legal expertise to bring a fresh perspective to the business world. By recognizing that his previous experiences had transferable value, he was able to remix his career and create a new, more fulfilling path. Grant also acknowledges that career pivots can be difficult, especially if you've invested years of education or experience into a particular field. However, he argues that career shifts aren't as risky as we often think. In fact, they can often lead to greater fulfillment and a more balanced life. The key to making these transitions successfully lies in having a flexible mindset, being willing to invest in learning new skills, and being comfortable with the discomfort of stepping into the unknown. In conclusion, Chapter 8 serves as a powerful reminder that our careers are not fixed destinies. We don't have to stay on the path that we started with. We have the power to rethink, remix, and reinvent our careers at any stage. It's about having the courage to explore new opportunities, to remain curious, and to embrace the idea that growth comes not from following a rigid path, but from adapting and learning along the way. The ability to rethink our careers opens up endless possibilities for fulfillment, innovation, and success, proving that with the right mindset, we can create a professional life that aligns with our evolving interests and ambitions. Chapter 9, The Art of Rethinking Relationships. In Chapter 9, we move beyond the individual journey of rethinking and begin to focus on one of the most influential aspects of our lives, relationships. Relationships, whether with family, friends, colleagues, or romantic partners, have a profound impact on our emotional well-being, success, and even our overall happiness. Yet, we often approach them with a mindset that's shaped by our past experiences, societal expectations, or even outdated assumptions. This chapter explores the power of rethinking relationships in order to create stronger, healthier connections and ultimately a more fulfilling life. Grant starts by addressing a common misconception that relationships are something that we have little control over. Many of us believe that relationships either work or they don't, that they're governed by a set of unchangeable rules, and that we can't influence their dynamics. This is where the power of rethinking comes into play. Rethinking relationships means questioning the traditional assumptions we hold about how relationships should look, how they should evolve, and what makes them successful. The chapter opens with discussion about relationship flexibility, the idea that relationships are not static and should be approached with an open mind. As we evolve as individuals, so too must our relationships. What worked at one stage of life might not work at another, and that's okay. Relationships, like everything else in life, require adaptation. A friendship that was once central to your life may no longer hold the same importance, or a romantic relationship that started on one trajectory may need to evolve to match your changing needs and aspirations. One of the key themes in this chapter is the concept of growth-based relationships. Grant argues that in order to have fulfilling, long-lasting relationships, we need to focus on growth, both personal and shared. When we enter into relationships with an open mindset, ready to evolve and adapt, we give ourselves and others a space to grow and develop together. This is true for friendships, family bonds, and romantic partnerships. It's about recognizing that both people in a relationship have their own goals, challenges, and trajectories, and that these can and should coexist rather than forcing a relationship into a box defined by expectations or past experiences. However, Grant also stresses that growth doesn't always mean progress in the traditional sense. Sometimes growth means acknowledging when a relationship is no longer serving you or when it's time to let go. This can be one of the hardest decisions to make, but it's also one of the most empowering. Rethinking relationships doesn't just mean improving the ones you're in. It also means being willing to walk away from toxic or unfulfilling connections and choosing relationships that support your journey toward a better life. A powerful component of rethinking relationships involves addressing the role of communication. We often assume that we understand each other, that we know what the other person wants or needs. But communication is one of the most misunderstood aspects of relationships. Grant highlights that effective communication is not just about growth occurs when we step into the unknown, when we allow ourselves to question, explore, and entertain new possibilities without being attached to a definitive answer. Embracing uncertainty is about giving ourselves permission to not know. Grant begins a chapter by referencing the field of science, where uncertainty is a foundation of progress. In the world of research and discovery, the most groundbreaking ideas often arise from uncertainty, the willingness to entertain the possibility that what we think we know might not be the full picture. This is the very essence of scientific inquiry, posing questions, testing hypotheses, and being open to new, often contradictory information. The greatest scientists and thinkers, Grant points out, are those who are comfortable living with doubt and uncertainty, who are constantly willing to reconsider their assumptions. This principle extends beyond science into our everyday lives. Living with doubt doesn't mean being indecisive or paralyzed by inaction. Instead, it's about having the courage to ask tough questions, to challenge our beliefs, and to remain open to new perspectives. By embracing uncertainty, we begin to develop a growth mindset, one that sees challenges as opportunities for learning rather than threats to our competence. It's in the face of uncertainty that we have the most room to grow, adapt, and evolve. Grant shares several stories of successful individuals who have achieved greatness not by having all the answers, but by consistently questioning what they thought they knew. These individuals were not afraid to say, "I don't know," or "I was wrong." Instead of seeing doubt as a flaw, they recognize it as a sign of intellectual humility and openness. It's this mindset that allowed them to embrace new ideas, change course when necessary, and ultimately find solutions that others couldn't see. Doubt, as Grant explains, is a form of mental flexibility. It's the ability to recognize that our current understanding might be incomplete or flawed. This doesn't mean we discard everything we know, but rather that we remain open to improving our understanding. The key is to question our assumptions, to consider that there may be alternative viewpoints, data, or experiences that could shift our perspective. This is crucial in our personal and professional lives, where we often make decisions based on incomplete or outdated information. By embracing doubt, we open ourselves up to better decision-making. Another important aspect of embracing uncertainty is the role it plays in decision-making. Grant discusses how the most effective decision-makers are not those who make quick, confident choices, but those who are willing to take their time, gather information, and challenge their own assumptions. Instead of rushing conclusions, they remain open to adjusting their views as new information arises. This approach requires patience, self-awareness, and the ability to manage discomfort, qualities that come from embracing uncertainty. Grant also emphasizes that uncertainty isn't just about avoiding the wrong decisions. It's also about creating space for innovation. When we allow ourselves to be uncertain, we free ourselves from the constraints of rigid thinking. We become more willing to experiment, take risks, and explore unconventional ideas. This is particularly important in today's fast-paced world, where the rate of change is constantly accelerating. The ability to adapt to new circumstances, remain flexible, and innovate is critical for success in almost any field. But what about the fear that comes with uncertainty? How do we manage the anxiety that arises when we don't have all the answers? Grant acknowledges that uncertainty can feel uncomfortable, sometimes deeply so. It can trigger feelings of fear, doubt, and insecurity. However, rather than avoiding these feelings, Grant encourages us to lean into them. He argues that discomfort is a signal. It's a sign that we're pushing beyond our comfort zones and into a space where growth can occur. Instead of running from uncertainty, we should learn to embrace the discomfort, to sit with it, and to recognize it as an opportunity for learning and transformation. The chapter also delves into the idea of cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift our thinking and approach based on new information or changing circumstances. Cognitive flexibility is essential for adapting to new challenges, solving complex problems, and maintaining mental resilience. By embracing uncertainty, we cultivate this flexibility, allowing us to make more informed, adaptable, and innovative decisions. This, in turn, makes us more effective in both our personal and professional lives. Grant closes a chapter with a powerful call to action, to actively seek out doubt and uncertainty in our lives. Instead of avoiding the unknown, we should seek opportunities to question, explore, and challenge our assumptions. This doesn't mean being reckless or abandoning our values, but it does mean creating space for growth, whether through trying new things, listening to different perspectives, or simply allowing ourselves to be unsure. In a world that values certainty and confidence, embracing doubt is an act of courage and intellectual strength. Chapter 10 ultimately invites us to reframe our relationship with uncertainty. Rather than fearing it, we should see it as a tool for deeper understanding, innovation, and growth. Embracing uncertainty allows us to challenge our assumptions, make better decisions, and open ourselves up to new possibilities. It's a mindset that can transform not only how we think, but how we live. Chapter 11, Rethinking Failure and the Power of Second Chances. As we step into Chapter 11, we confront a pervasive idea that can often hold us back: failure. Society often portrays failure as something to be feared, something that signifies the end of the road, a sign of incompetence or inadequacy. But in this chapter, Grant invites us to take a fresh look at failure, not as an end, but as a beginning. Failure is not the enemy. In fact, Grant argues that it is a necessary component of growth, a stepping stone on the path to success. However, the way we react to failure determines whether it will be a learning experience or a roadblock. Instead of letting failure paralyze us, we need to rethink our relationship with it. Failure isn't a permanent state. It's an opportunity for reflection, reevaluation, and ultimately, transformation. Grant kicks off the chapter by discussing the societal tendency to view failure as a personal flaw. Whether it's a failed business venture, a missed career opportunity, or a personal setback, many of us internalize failure, seeing it as a reflection of our inadequacy. This internalized failure can be debilitating, leading to a fear of trying new things or pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones. Grant challenges this view, suggesting that failure is not a reflection of who we are, but simply a part of the process of learning and evolving. The chapter goes on to explore the idea of reframing failure. Instead of seeing failure as something to be avoided at all costs, Grant urges us to embrace it as a vital part of our growth journey. Failure doesn't mean you've reached the end. It means you've reached a point where you have the chance to adjust, learn, and come back stronger. Failure is feedback, a valuable signal that we need to reevaluate our approach or our strategy. Grant introduces a concept known as a learning loop, a cycle in which failure leads to learning, and learning leads to growth. He uses examples from both personal and professional domains, showcasing how individuals who have failed repeatedly have used those failures as opportunities for profound self-improvement. Take Thomas Edison, for instance, whose famous response to his many failed attempts at inventing the light bulb was, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's ability to reframe failure as part of the experimentation process was key to his eventual success. For Grant, the learning loop is about building resilience. Instead of seeing failure as a final verdict, we should see it as a checkpoint, a chance to course correct and try again with a new perspective. In a sense, failure sharpens us. It forces us to ask deeper questions, challenge assumptions, and find more creative solutions. It makes us more adaptable and open to change. When we embrace this mindset, we stop fearing failure and start welcoming it as an integral part of the process. But how do we go about reframing failure in practical terms? Grant shares several strategies. One is to separate your identity from your actions. When we fail, we often take it personally, believing that failure means we are failures. But Grant reminds us that failure is something that happens to us, not who we are. By separating the two, we can maintain a healthier perspective. Our worth doesn't depend on any single success or failure. Instead, it is about the larger journey of growth and learning. Another approach Grant discusses is the concept of incremental progress. Instead of viewing failure as a catastrophic event, we should think of it as part of an ongoing process of improvement. Small failures, when understood as steps in a larger plan, can be less intimidating. The key is to keep moving forward, even if it's in small increments. The ability to take one small step after another, despite the setbacks, is one of the hallmarks of resilient individuals. Grant also highlights the importance of feedback. One of the reasons failure can feel so final is that we often don't receive feedback or learn from it. To combat this, he suggests actively seeking feedback, whether from mentors, peers, or through self-reflection. This feedback serves as a compass, guiding us as we reevaluate our strategies and adjust our approach. The faster we get feedback, the faster we can iterate, improve, and move closer to our goals. One of the most compelling aspects of Chapter 11 is Grant's discussion on second chances. Too often, society looks at a failure as a closed door, but Grant argues that in reality, failure can open up new doors, ones that we might never have considered had we succeeded at the first attempt. The power of second chances lies in the freedom to try again, with the wisdom of experience to guide us. Many successful individuals, Grant reminds us, have had multiple failures before achieving their breakthroughs. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't often comes down to the willingness to keep trying. Grant emphasizes that second chances are not always given. They often have to be earned. They require resilience, a willingness to acknowledge past mistakes, and the courage to keep moving forward despite them. However, when we approach failure with a mindset that it's not a final judgment, but rather an opportunity for a second chance, we unlock a powerful tool for growth. The ability to embrace second chances is what sets successful people apart from those who get discouraged and give up after a failure. The chapter closes with a powerful reminder that failure is not the opposite of success. Instead, it is a part of success. We often think of failure as a complete contradiction to success, but in reality, failure is integral to the journey. It is a testing ground where we find our true capabilities, the place where we are forced to adapt, learn, and innovate. The key to success, Grant suggests, is not avoiding failure, but rather learning how to fail intelligently, to use failure as a guidepost that leads us to eventual success. Chapter 11 ultimately shifts our perspective on failure. It's not something to avoid or fear, but something to embrace as a crucial part of the learning process. When we learn to fail well, we open ourselves up to the power of second chances, the freedom to experiment, and the courage to keep trying no matter how many times we fall. Failure isn't a stop sign. It's simply a redirection, a chance to try again with greater wisdom and a deeper understanding. By reframing failure as feedback and embracing second chances, we can cultivate resilience, perseverance, and ultimately, success. In conclusion, embracing the power of rethinking is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. As Adam Grant shows in Think Again, the ability to challenge your own beliefs and assumptions is key to personal growth, innovation, and success. By cultivating intellectual humility and being open to new ideas, we can navigate an ever-changing world with confidence and creativity. If you found this audiobook summary helpful, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and share this with others who are looking to grow and improve their thinking. For more actionable insights from top business and self-development books, explore our channel and keep learning.